Hello again. We are still on the subject of heroes and anti-heroes and their characters and choices. In this lesson, we look at King Solomon and how he chose between wisdom and worldly values. Character is the consistent pattern in which we make moral decisions. What do you think was Solomon's character trait or traits that led him both to ask God for wisdom, but instead of listening to God, listened to his 1,000 wives and concubines? The scriptures say that he clung to these in love. So what went wrong with Solomon? I would ask the students to discuss that. I would ask the students to reflect on how they might see themselves doing the same thing, perhaps on a different scale, but nevertheless. I can imagine that when first faced with the task of leading a nation, Solomon felt humble and needed God's help. Then, as he got more confident and experienced and successful, he forgot that he needed God and thought that he knew everything and grew arrogant. Dr. Gerrit points out that Solomon, in his pursuit of wealth and power and pleasure, turned away from God. He pursued the gifts of wisdom rather than the giver. His love for all the trappings of kinghood, wealth, power, women, turned him away from the love of God. Instead of continuing to listen to God, he started to listen to his wives and to other gods, perhaps because it was easier to do so, perhaps because it was easier to follow what other people were doing, what other nations were doing, to follow a formula for success or kingship, rather than staying humble in relationship with God. There is nothing wrong in itself with being successful or wealthy. In fact, God blessed Solomon with wealth because he wanted to serve God. The problem comes when we start seeking wealth, thinking that wealth or success or security is proof of God's blessing. The Protestant work ethic is built on this formula. You could ask your students whether they think wealth or success is proof of God's blessing. How are we looking for success or security instead of a relationship with the living or loving God? You could also spend some time talking about Dr. Gerrit's observation that most characters in Scripture are neither wholehearted nor no-hearted. Most are complex or in between. What are the lessons here for leaders today or for ordinary Christians?